Hello everyone, I'm Glorious and I welcome new and recurring people to my channel. You're now watching my weirdest Pride merge experience. While the opinion on Pride marches is pretty split, even amongst LGBT plus people, I generally very enjoy them, mostly because they're an occasion for me to meet some fun and like-minded people and to express yourself and to show the support from inside the community, but at the same time to protest for a cause I deem important. While there are many problems that can happen with those events, all my experience have been overwhelmingly positive, but that's not really the point of the video. The point is the bizarre experience that at points is going to sound like something straight out of, I don't know what, a cartoon or a webcomic, but trust me, I'm retelling as accurate as a subjective experience of one person can be. Okay, so back to the story. It was late June. It was a very hot but cloudy day. I was there with my friend. I made these awesome, which I'm still very proud of, Pride wings that I spent like 2 days and multiple hours beforehand working on. So we arrived at the place. We saw quite a lot of people and we knew we were at the right place because we live in a medium-sized, for my country standards, city where there's pretty much only one place where you can organize a public event like that, especially a march that needs to have quite a lot of space to move from point A to point B. We saw quite a lot of people gathered around, we saw some rainbow stuff, but way less than in the previous year. And just for info, that was the second ever Pride event organized in my hometown, and it happened 1 year ago. Pretty much exactly 1 year ago from the moment this is recorded. So we all gathered together and we are trying to spot any familiar faces or anyone who seemed like an organizer or someone who could tell us where should we gather and what to do. There was no speaker, no one who seemed like an organizer. Of course there was a ton of police. And people dressed in rainbow stuff. So we just stood at the end of the gathering, waiting when something will happen. Because the last time there were like banners being handed out to people and speakers with saying like rules what is and what is not allowed at the event. You know, regular stuff. We spotted a bunch of people that we started talking to, some really nice people our age. Then we finally, me, my friend and the 3 other girls who joined us, spotted someone who seemed like an organizer. We bought ourselves a bit of pins because it's always nice to have a souvenir, plus you can support the organizers who are putting their free time and resources to do that. So, but the event didn't really seem to be starting. We were just waiting around and nothing really was happening. We didn't really know what was supposed to be happening. And you of course saw some counter-protesters, and of course I saw a van in the distance and at the end of the track and a billboard, but they were too far away from me to really see if there were counter-protesters or just any event. So it finally started. Around 40 minutes from the designated starting time have passed. There was still no audio or no speaker, no one was speaking, but at least we got directed to go. And then a new person showed up. One of the organizers, a very nice blonde woman covered entirely in glitter. And we talked for a while and she pretty much, the first thing she approached us with was, I'm searching for some people to just yell and slogans that we're going to be passing. I was a bit surprised when no one with a speaker is doing that, but hey, we're here to help. So it started slowly but rather peacefully. Of course, We were waving to some angry counter-protesters, fight hate with love and shit like this. And we got some funny slogans, and then started raining. And it wasn't like a drizzle or a bit of rain, and it didn't really start slowly. No, it was like the heavens suddenly opened with huge downpour. Some people were prepared and they had umbrellas, but most of us didn't. It was like the biggest rain I experienced in a long time, and while it wasn't very long, everything on me was wet. I looked like I jumped into a pool with my clothing. Of course, my wings just fell off due to the rain, so I was just carrying them for the rest of the time. A cynical person could say that God was angry at us for organizing the event, but I'm going to be faster and say that it mostly worked at chasing away the counter-protesters, so what you're gonna say about that? And yes, the roads pretty much cleared up after it finished raining. But before that, we actually saw a police car driving around with a water cannon because, of course, we had to stop like 10 minutes after starting. But from what I learned from later reports in the media, they just had it around, but there was no need to use it to disperse the crowd. So we moved forward. And the few following streets, we were like supposed to make this weird circle around the main street and then come back to where we started. Went pretty calm. There were some people just waving at us from windows of their homes. Most of them were really kind and cute. Oh, and there was one guy who apparently was in the window with a rosary and an icon. I don't really know what he was supposed to be doing there. So my throat was hurting from yelling. I was also asking the organizers about many different details, and then we came back to the main street. So now it's the final straight line, but it was still one of the longest parts there. And finally, I finally got closer to the platform, like a van with a platform of the organizers, and finally a bit of music started playing. Of course they played YMCA, because there is no gay pride parades without YMCA playing, and a bunch of other characteristic tunes. And then I learned from Glitter Girl, who was popping out of the crowd and disappearing every once and again, that the reason why even now the sound quality was so bad and it was so quiet, and why there was no sound before, was because before the event someone sneaked in from the counter-protesters and cut their cables, and and then I learned that they like quickly in panic mode stitched it back together with some equipment taken from a first aid set. So, well, Polish creativity, there is a bit of it in all of us. And then I asked Glitter Girl, just out of curiosity, when she was trying to find people to chant, what were her like criteria to pick people from the crowd? And I got a pretty funny answer where she said that she was trying to find people in like stranger, more alternative clothing, because as much she joked that more normie people, while it's amazing that we have their support and that they're present there, they usually aren't willing to be too loud or to bring too much attention to them. So we reached the final segment of the main street. Generally, organizing an event like that in my hometown, which is mostly known as being a pilgrimage center, is a risky endeavor in general, but you know, people will always find a complaint no matter when and where it was supposed to be organized. For example, apparently in the same time there was a Christian radio fan like a huge meetup gathering going on in the city center, but the problem is that the march happened on Sunday literally because the organizers were somewhere else on Saturday, and during the summertime, there is a meetup or an event like the one I mentioned above, literally every weekend. And I'm not going to be addressing the incredible comments like you should be organizing this in a forest far away from any people who might see it, because I don't think there is need to explain the genius behind that idea. Also, no, we didn't organize both the Pride marches weren't organized in a strictly like church territory, because the main street like has many events. There are sometimes stores in there. There is a sports fan event when any massive football games are going on. So let me come back. We were approaching our destination, but then we ended up being stopped again. And this is where things got wild. One of the organizers, he was wearing like a bi pride flag, and he was the one carrying the Rainbow Mary portrait. Yeah, you probably heard the controversy about that one if you're Polish, and I'm not really going to go too deeply into that controversy because that's not the topic of this video. And then a guy jumped off the crowd, just with fists straight onto the guy with the painting. He had to be stopped by like multiple police officers who, surprisingly enough, reacted quite quickly to an assault attempt. So we moved forward, but mostly we were standing in one place. So we talked a little. Oh, and now it's time for the fence wars. Behind the fence there were counter-protestants in the park, and we were on the street. More like a walking area, it's not a street you can drive. They were really invested. Of course I got called a bunch of mean words a bunch of times, or all of us got. I feel like they were slightly underprepared for what kind of people specifically they're going to encounter over there. And a ton of their counter-protester slogans were like, "What do you want to teach our children?" I don't know, I'm in high school. Most of us were women, like 70% women, mostly high schoolers and college students with occasional parent or an elderly person. Of course we got called the F word a bunch of times, and it was kind of hilarious considering that all of their like banners were stuff about gay men, and the event was like 70% women, which was kind of funny. But the person that stuck out to me the most was like this middle-aged blonde woman in a straw hat just aggressively waving a rosary in front of us. Also, apparently some guy started spraying holy water, but that was to be expected. I got sprayed with holy water the last year I came there, so no surprise there. And we were standing in one place because the blockades got, and the police, even if we were legally there and the counter-protesters weren't, the police of course didn't want to deconstruct like a barricade made with people way more eager to start a physical fight with the police, and most of us, well, it's easier to ask the peaceful group to disperse, of course. I spotted some guy wearing a red is bad t-shirt, arguing with some girls that were around my age, I don't really remember, and he was super pissed. I remember him speaking stuff like, "We're not entering your bars, why are you entering our territory?" or stuff like that. And then I came to Glitter Girl. Hey, there's this one guy that's arguing with girls, and he's super angry, and maybe someone should be looking at this because that doesn't look like a safe situation and no one was really looking at. And so we then went separate directions, and she told me that she's going to check on it. So I went to the other side, and then swoosh, something flew through the crowd. Someone threw an egg in our direction. And I don't know what their target was, but they seemed to have such amazing aim that they hit a car of the organizers. Maybe that was the direction, but it really seemed like they tried to hit the crowd with an egg. But to be honest, I don't know. one of like a local right-wing politicians started blocking a road with a very smug face, and the police like couldn't legally ask him to remove him from the place. So we tried forming like a way for our car to move forward. That was a pretty elaborate plan. They moved for a little bit, but then the police asked to like close the event, and yeah, that was an understandable situation there. But also coming back to the white shirt guy, and then I see he jumps at someone, and the police has to stop a second assault attempt. Fun! The crowds are slowly dispersing. Okay, there were also some small speeches from the organizer with whatever sound equipment they could get, and the crowd started slowly dispersing. Me and my friend wanted to talk to the organizers afterwards, so we were just sitting in one place for a moment, and I started to get a bit nervous because most of the police started leaving. All the crowds started getting mixed up. A bunch of random people started approaching our group. We had to wait quite a while because Glitter Girl was filing a police report about the shirt guy because the police stopped her, and we were waiting. There was some angry girl in a patriotic t-shirt, like no offense to patriotic t-shirts, but why so many people who buy them are like that? There was one guy who had no idea what was happening, and he was like, "Oh wow, that's a cool event, it kind of reminds me of Woodstock." He was very wholesome. And there was another guy who just kind of started talking to us out of curiosity. Some very nice people. Generally, my experience, even if it was crazy, was very positive because I met so many nice people and I could have a moment of self-expression. Generally, I had a lot of fun there. And then the most fascinating thing happened. A girl came back, we were about to leave, like the organizer were packing stuff to their car, and then we got approached by the two most mesmerizing individuals I've seen that afternoon. Two elderly ladies wearing red capes, like red cloaks with crosses, and Jesus portraits, like the most smooth-faced Jesus portraits you can imagine, on the back. And they randomly started giving like a little bit of salt to all the attendees or the organizers. We have no idea what they were really supposed to do, but then also Glitter Girl said something. Do you know that purifying with salt is a pagan tradition? They haven't answered because, well, as I say, you don't mess with pagans. And then one of the organizers just like threw the bit of salt he got back at them, just like pinched it. And then they started throwing salt and it was a moment of throwing just salt at people. Just a little bit, but I still cannot fathom how historical that whole deal was. And then they left, flowing their fabulous smooth-faced Jesus-backed red capes. For the whole year I was naming them the Salt Crusader Grandmas, but my dearest friend came with a better name, so now officially they're the Salt Dust Crusaders.